I always imagined my daughter's wedding would be the happiest day of my life. I raised Victoria alone after her father died in a car accident when she was just 5. I worked 2 jobs, went without new clothes for years, and skipped meals, so she could attend the best schools, take ballet, learn the piano. She was my world. And now she was getting married to a successful, charming man from a wealthy family. I should have been beaming with pride, but instead I found out I wasn't invited. Not from her, not from a formal card or a phone call. No, my own sister told me over tea on a rainy afternoon. She says it's just immediate family, Aunt Marian said gently, sipping her cup. Just the groom's parents, siblings, that kind of thing. I stared at her, stunned. But I am her. Immediate family. Aunt Marian reached across the table to touch my hand. I know, darling, I'm so sorry. I didn't cry. Not then. Not in front of Aunt Marian. I thanked her, said I must have misunderstood, and went home. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall for hours. How could she do this? After everything? I called Victoria that evening, hoping it was some ridiculous mistake. Mom? She answered after 3 rings, her voice cold-clipped. What's going on? I heard I'm not invited to your wedding. There was a pause. Just long. Enough to sting. It's going to be very formal. It's a private affair. We're keeping it small. His family. They have expectations. Swallowed hard. But I'm your mother, Victoria. And I'm the bride. Her voice sharpened. It's my day, Mom. You don't even know how to behave around his family. I don't want you embarrassing me. Embarrassing her. I didn't yell. Didn't beg. I just let the silence say everything. Anyway, she said, sighing, I've got a fitting bye. And just like that, the line went dead. That night, I sat with a box of old photographs Victoria as a baby in my arms. In her ballet shoes, holding her college diploma, both of us smiling. She used to hold my hand in crowded places. She used to cry if I didn't kiss her goodnight. I didn't recognize the woman she'd become. A stranger with my daughter's eyes. But what she didn't know? What no one knew was that the place she booked for her glamorous high society wedding. It belonged to me. Years ago, I invested in a historic estate called the Winsley House with a dear friend, Henry. It was once a rundown manor on the outskirts of the city. Together, we restored it him the face, me, the silent partner. He ran the business while I stayed out of sight. It was a peaceful little secret of mine. Something that made me feel proud and private. Victoria had no idea. She thought I was just a retired school teacher with barely enough money to fix the boiler. When she told me I wouldn't be attending, she had no clue she was standing on my ground. I called Henry the next morning. Elaine. He said warmly, I was wondering when you'd call. The bride's mother hasn't said a word about you. Because she doesn't know I'm coming. A pause, then a chuckle. Tell me you're not about to do something dramatic. I smiled, but my voice stayed calm. No, Henry. I'm going to do something fair. Henry met me at the garden gate of Winsley House with that same mischievous twinkle in his eye he's had since we restored the place together over a decade ago. You look different, he said, stepping back to get a better look at me, determined. I feel it, I replied, as we walked through the manicured gardens. The sound of clinking crystal and hurried footsteps echoed from the grand ballroom. The wedding team was hard at work, stringing lights, rolling out carpets, positioning, imported flower arrangements. Your daughter didn't even blink twice when she booked this place, Henry said, adjusting his cufflinks. Treated my staff like they were invisible, gave her mother's name as Elaine Monroe. But I knew it was you the moment she said the name. She never once asked me where I live or what I've done all these years. I said, my voice, quiet. I let my fingers trail along the banister of the marble staircase. We had chosen that banister together. Sanded it, stained it, polished it. Now it gleamed like her wedding dreams. You don't have to do anything, Henry said carefully. You can shut it down right now. Cancel the whole event. Learn. I shook my head. No, she wouldn't learn anything if I canceled it today. She'd call me bitter, jealous. She'd cry to the media that her poor, mean mother ruined her wedding. Henry grinned. "So you have a plan?" I smiled back. "Let her have her moment. Let the whole grand show begin. I'll let her believe she won, and then I'll remind her who she erased." We walked into the grand hall. Staff buzzed around. Like bees. I noticed the tables, 16 of them, each covered in silk. Seating charts arranged with exquisite care. I scanned the names, every distant uncle, every second cousin of the groom, every influencer and donor from his families. Business circle, they were all there. But not one table had the name Elaine. Not one chair for mother of the bride. "How much is she paying for all this?" I asked. Henry smirked. Actually, her fiancé's family prepaid the deposit. But she added thousands more from her card once to impress the world. She said. I sighed. Victoria always thought looking expensive was the same as being important. She's getting married in a place built by the very woman she's trying to hide. Henry said with a chuckle. "There's poetry in that?" I nodded. "That's why I'm letting it all go ahead. Let the photos be taken. Let the band play. Let her wear her glass slippers." But when the clock strikes midnight, Henry raised an eyebrow. "You planning to be her fairy godmother or the storm?" "Depends on her next move," I said. "But she should know better than to write me out of the story." Later that afternoon, I returned home and dug through a folder of documents buried in the back of my closet. Shareholding papers, ownership deeds, the original investment receipts in my name. All of it was clean, legal, and binding. No one knew Winslade House belonged to me. Not my neighbors, not my church friends, not even Aunt Marion. I had kept it quiet for myself now. That silence had become my greatest advantage. I picked up the phone and called Henry again. "I'm coming to the wedding," I said simply. "But not as her mother." "Oh," he replied, amused. "And what shall I put on your name tag?" I paused for a moment. "Owner," I said. "No surname, just owner." That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea as the sun dipped behind the trees. I thought about all the times I'd sacrificed my dreams so Victoria could chase hers. There was a time I wanted to be a painter. I used to sketch in the margins of textbooks when she was a baby. But instead, I worked, cooked, cleaned, saved, and built something real. This venue, life. While she tried to climb ladders by pretending I didn't exist. But blood doesn't entitle anyone to love. Not when it's disrespected. Victoria thought she was marrying into power. She didn't know was. She was standing on it, and I was about to show her what it really meant to own something. And yourself. I still remember the way Victoria clung to me when she broke her arm at 9. She'd refused the doctor's touch, the nurses, reassurances. All she wanted was me. "Don't let go, Mommy," she cried, even as they wrapped her cast. "Don't go anywhere." I didn't. I stayed by her side when she flunked her first high school exam, when she got rejected from her dream college, when her first boyfriend cheated on her. Every step of the way, I was there with open arms and a heart big enough to carry her pain. But it seems she'd forgotten all of that. A few days before the wedding, Kai dropped by Winsley's house again under the pretense of checking the lighting with Henry. In truth, I was curious and suspicious. The guest list had ballooned. Dozens of tables, imported floral arches, gold-trimmed dinnerware flown in from France. It was a royal affair. And yet, I overheard one of the wedding planners whispering to another. Bride said her mom's some kind of ... retired teacher. Poor woman. Apparently not wedding material. I didn't flinch. Didn't correct them. Let them believe what they wanted. The real story was in the walls. The garden paths, the hand-painted ceiling I'd personally commissioned 5 years ago. That was my name in invisible ink, and I intended to make it visible as I walked out to the veranda. I paused behind a marble column. My daughter was standing on the far end of the terrace with her future in-laws, Senator Royce and his polished wife, Clarissa. They were the type of people who treated everyone like campaign staff, smiling while condescending. Victoria's laughter was a little too forced, her posture too perfect. She was performing. Clarissa leaned in and asked, "And your mother? Will she be walking you down the aisle?" Victoria's expression soured. No, she wasn't invited. "I don't want to deal with any emotional scenes," Clarissa pursed. Her lips. Understandable. It's a high-profile wedding. Can't afford a spectacle. "She wouldn't know how to behave anyway," Victoria added. "She's never been around real wealth." I didn't wait to hear the rest. I walked away before the rage rising in my throat could escape. That night, I pulled out a photo album. Not a curated, Instagram perfect scrapbook. A real album, yellowed pages and wrinkled corners. There was Victoria in her first Halloween costume, a bee. Me sewing that very costume on the living room floor. Her laughing, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger. I used to think love was enough to make someone grateful. But sometimes when people start climbing, they cut the ladder beneath them, forgetting who held it steady in the first place. 2 more days to the wedding. The estate was buzzing like a disturbed beehive. Security checkpoints were being set up. Trucks unloading equipment. Servers in black and white rehearsing their steps. And me, stood quietly in the courtyard, unnoticed. Like a ghost in the house I built. "Victoria's giving the staff hell," Henry told me as he adjusted a rose centerpiece. "Apparently she screamed at a waiter for not knowing which fork was which." "She doesn't know I once waited tables to buy her first school uniform," I said. Henry placed a hand on my shoulder. "She'll remember. Trust me." Later. That afternoon, while sipping coffee in the back garden, I saw the bride-to-be herself storming out with her phone pressed to her ear. "No, Mom," she snapped. "I don't care if you're hurt. This is my wedding. You'll ruin everything. Just stay away, please." She hung up and tossed her phone into her purse with a scoff. She didn't see me in the corner. She didn't know I'd heard everything. I was no longer sad. No longer hoping she'd come to her senses. I was resolved. I called Henry again that evening. "Is the microphone set up for the final toast?" I asked. "Yes. Want me to slot you in after the father of the groom?" "No. I'll be taking the stage after the cake cutting." Henry chuckled. "You always did like a dramatic ending." "This isn't drama," I said softly. "It's remembrance." For the mother she forgot. That night I ironed a sleek, elegant navy blue dress I hadn't worn in years. I polished the tiny gold locket that still held a photo of baby Victoria. Inside, I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to plead for a seat at her table. I was going to remind her that the table stood on my floorboards, and when the music played and the guests toasted, it would finally know whose house they were celebrating in. The morning of the wedding, the sky was spotless, the kind of gentle blue that painters chase, and poets envy. A breeze whispered through the ivy lining the brick walls of Winsley's house, carrying the scent of gardenias and old roses. It would have been a perfect day if it belonged to someone else. I arrived early, hours before the ceremony. Not through the grand entrance like a guest, but through the back, the way the staff entered. The way the invisible entered. Henry met me inside the catering area, sipping a strong cup of coffee and grinning like a man with a front row seat. "To a beautiful storm. Ready?" he asked. "More than I've ever been." We walked through the kitchens and past the dressing rooms, where makeup artists and stylists rushed past us with brushes, steamers, and stressed-out expressions. Victoria's voice rang out from the bridal suite, sharp and impatient. "No, not the lavender," I said. "Ivory roses. Are you all idiots?" Henry looked at me, then raised his eyebrows. "She's really leaning into the princess routine." "She's forgotten real queens don't scream," I replied. At 11 a.m., the first wave of guests arrived. Black. Cars and hired limousines lined the circular driveway. Camera flashes popped. Designers' names were casually dropped into conversations, and with silver cufflinks and women with frozen smiles walked in like they belonged. They passed the threshold of my building. My walls. My floor's dot, and they had no idea. Henry had instructed the staff per my request. No special announcements, no interference. I didn't want them to stop the wedding. I wanted them to let it unfold exactly as planned. Every shallow toast, every fake compliment, every dismissive glance toward the help. But I had given one command. When I stepped forward, follow my lead. No questions, no hesitation. It wasn't power I wanted. By 1 p.m., the ceremony began under the grand archway in the courtyard. I stood in the back dressed in navy. No corsage, no special chair. Just another woman in the crowd. The violin quartet played a soft prelude as Victoria walked down the aisle. Radiant in a designer gown, lace-trimmed, cold-shouldered, trailing a ridiculous 6-foot veil behind her. Gasps and applause filled the air. Phones came out. Everyone wanted to capture the moment. No one noticed me. And that was exactly how I wanted it for now. After vows were exchanged and champagne flowed, the celebration moved into the ballroom. The chandeliers sparkled like stars. Every table glowed under candlelight. The cake, 5-tiered, hand-painted, sat proudly on its pedestal, waiting for the knife. I watched from the side, my heels silent on the polished wood floor. Every guest was sipping, laughing, basking in the illusion of wealth, harmony, perfection, and then I heard it. The final insult. I was standing just behind a marble column, not 10 feet from Victoria and her friends. One of them, a blonde girl with fake pearls and a louder laugh than wit, asked, "Is your mom here?" Someone said they saw her. Victoria snorted. "I hope not. She doesn't belong here. Told security she's not on the list. Probably at home watching soap operas and crying." Her friends laughed. I turned and walked away. Not because it hurt. It didn't. Not anymore. I walked away because the curtain had fallen. It was showtime. Backstage, I found Henry near the sound booth. He handed me a wireless mic without a word. "You sure?" he asked. I nodded. "Make it unforgettable." The moment came after the cake cutting. Victoria and her husband, still beaming in blissful ignorance, smiled for the cameras, kissed on cue, and sliced the first piece together. People clapped, glasses clinked. A toast was expected. Henry walked onto the small stage and tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, smiling smoothly, "before we move on to dancing and dessert, we have a special message from someone very dear to this venue and to this day." There was a pause. A flicker of confusion crossed Victoria's face. She turned to whisper something to her husband, who shrugged, and then I stepped forward. The room fell quiet. I walked slowly to the center of the stage in my navy dress, holding the mic gently like it was made of glass. People began to murmur. Some turned to each other. Others stared, trying to remember where they'd seen my face before. Victoria froze, her lips parted, her hands clenched, her eyes darted like a trapped animal's. I waited for silence. Then I began. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Elaine. Some of you may know me as the mother of the bride. Some of you may not know me at all. And that's okay. My daughter didn't think I belonged here either." A few guests shifted in their chairs. Victoria's face went pale. I continued. "This beautiful venue, every brick, every beam, every chandelier you see, I helped restore this place with my bare hands and my own savings. I own Winsley's house." Gasps. Dead silence. Victoria looked as if someone had poured ice water down her back. "I wasn't invited today," I said, my voice steady. "In fact, I was deliberately excluded, but that's okay. I didn't come here for vengeance. Came here because I built this space, the very one where my daughter said, 'Kay, she doesn't belong.' I let that hang in the air, but I belong. I always have. And while you've all enjoyed the view, the food, the glitter, and wine, I've been watching, not just today. For years." My voice softened. "To any parent who's ever sacrificed, who's ever been cast aside after giving everything, know this. Love doesn't always return the way you expect, but it has a memory, and sometimes it speaks." I stepped back and nodded toward the staff. And just like that, the music cut. The lights dimmed. The waiters stopped pouring. Wine. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria stood trembling. Mom, ... What are you doing? I turned to her and smiled. Not with cruelty, not with triumph, but with something stronger, clarity. I'm reminding you who you came from. I stepped off the stage slowly, deliberately, as if I'd just delivered a eulogy. And in a way I had, not for the wedding, that still had the illusion of life, of movement. Guests blinked and whispered. Champagne fizzled in untouched flutes. A string of waiters stood frozen by the walls, unsure whether to proceed or retreat, but for my silence. Yes, I had buried it. Wait just a second. Victoria's voice broke through the silence like shattered glass. She stepped forward in her ivory gown, heels clicking frantically against the hardwood. Her expression a mix of disbelief and fury. You're lying, she hissed. You don't own this place. You're just trying to ruin my day because you couldn't stand not being the center of attention for once. The guests turned toward me, their eyes now waiting for my reaction, unsure which version of reality to believe. I turned to the man standing near the DJ booth and gave him a small nod. He tapped a few keys on the connected screen, and within seconds, a projection lit up on the giant screen behind the stage. A scanned deed of ownership. My name. The seal. The lawyer's signature. The official stamp. Elaine M. Carter, sole owner of Winsley's house. State? Gasps erupted from every corner of the room. I could see it all, the stunned expressions. They murmured, "Oh my God," the way some people slowly turned in their seats to look at Victoria, waiting for her response like she was still performing a scene in a reality show. Her face flushed. Her eyes filled with disbelief and panic. You planned this, she spat. You waited for this moment to humiliate me. I finally looked her dead in the eyes and replied, calm and cold. No, I waited for this moment to remind you that no matter how high you climb, it never gives you the right to bury the ones who built the ladder. From the side, a woman, one of Victoria's bridesmaids, leaned toward her. I didn't know your mom owned this place, she whispered, loud enough that I could hear. She doesn't, Victoria snapped, her voice cracking. She's not. Supposed to, she was unraveling now. Every word out of her mouth only tangled the thread further. Then came the one voice that silenced the room more than mine ever could. Her new husband, Victoria. He said, stepping closer, "Why didn't you ever tell me your mom owned Winsley's house?" Even he hadn't known. I turned away slightly. Not to hide a smirk, I wasn't enjoying this. But I was done carrying guilt over someone who forgot how to be human. Victoria's lips parted, her hands fluttering as she tried to find words. It's not like that. She didn't raise me. In mansions, she worked here. She cleaned tiles and scrubbed windows. She wasn't rich. I offered softly, finishing the sentence for her. You're right. I wasn't. Not then. I turned toward the crowd. But while Victoria was chasing status, I was investing in legacy. I looked at the guests' faces I once served tea to, now watching me as if I'd stepped out of a different world. I was the maid here once, the florist, the weekend cleaner, and I bought it, quietly, patiently, while the world overlooked me. I never needed applause. I needed ownership. And today I reclaim my place, not as a mother you can silence, but as the woman who built this roof over all your heads. There was a strange moment where everything felt still, as if time itself paused. Then, chaos. Guests began whispering loudly now. Someone from the back, one of the socialites with a gossip blog, actually stood up and shouted, "Are we seriously standing inside a house the bride's mother owns? And she wasn't even invited." Another person chimed in, "This is nuts. That speech belongs on Oprah." Even the violinists in the corner looked stunned. Henry stepped beside me, grinning like the devil himself. This is going viral. Victoria was breathing heavy now. Her mascara streaked. Her perfect bun had loosened from the stress. "You ruined it," she whispered. "You ruined my day." I looked at her, sadness rising. "No, Victoria. I gave you everything. Your childhood, your comfort, your pride. I only claimed back one thing today, my voice." Then I took the mic one last time. "To everyone here, the night is still young, the food is still hot. Music still waiting. If you'd like to stay and dance under my roof, you are welcome. But I won't be silenced anymore. Not here, not ever again." There was a silence, then applause. Not just from Henry or a few staff members. Real applause. Some guests stood, some raised their glasses toward me. The same people who wouldn't have glanced my way an hour ago now looked at me as if they'd just witnessed a rebirth. Victoria stormed off. She disappeared through the side hallway, gown trailing behind her like smoke from a house fire. Her husband hesitated, watching me for a beat longer, then followed her. Later that night, I stood near the garden fountain, sipping a small glass of wine. Henry joined me, leaning against the stone ledge. "Not bad for a woman who wasn't invited," he said. I chuckled softly. "You think she ever forgive me?" I asked. He shrugged. "That depends. Forgiveness only matters when both sides still want to meet in the middle." I looked back toward the glowing ballroom, filled with laughter again. The music had resumed, guests danced, waiters served dessert like nothing had happened. But something had happened, and would never forget it. Because tonight, I didn't just crash my daughter's wedding. I walked into it with my head held high as the woman she thought she could leave behind. The next morning, the sun rose like nothing had happened. But everything had. I woke up in my own bed. Not a guest room or a cleaning closet like I used to back when I worked at Winslade House. My bed, my home, my name on the deed, my legacy, finally seen still. The ache in my chest didn't go away. Not from guilt, from grief. Because for all the applause and poetic justice the night before, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired, and empty. My phone had exploded overnight. Missed calls, messages, voicemails, social media tags. Apparently, a guest had live streamed my speech on TikTok. It had gone viral. Mother of the bride OWNs the venue and hijacks the wedding with a savage speech. She raised her alone, then got disinvited. Her response? Iconic. Hashtags were trending. Comment sections flooded with strangers calling me Queen Icon, the definition of grace under pressure. But not one message from Victoria. Not even a voicemail. Around 9 a.m., Henry called. "You seeing the internet?" he asked. "Trying." "Not to," I replied, pouring myself tea. "You're trending in 6 countries. A book deal is probably on its way." I sighed. "I didn't do it for fame. I know," he said gently. "You did it because you needed to be seen. And trust me, they see you now." There was a pause. Then he added, "Victoria's honeymoon was canceled. Apparently, the groom's family is furious. They're claiming she lied about everything." My stomach twisted. "I never meant to destroy her life." "You didn't," he said firmly. "She did that when she started treating you like a stain she needed to hide." By noon, a black car pulled into my driveway. Not Victoria, not her husband, not her friends. It was Lena, her childhood best friend. The one who used to sleep over when they were little. Who I used to feed pancakes and tuck in when her parents fought. She stepped out, holding a bouquet. "I hope you're not allergic to lilies," she said softly. "I'm not." She looked embarrassed. I wasn't sure I should come, but after what happened last night, I couldn't not say something. I motioned for her to come inside. She sat on the edge of my sofa like a guest in church. "I just wanted to say, thank you," she said. "Not for the drama, but for reminding us all that silence isn't grace. Grace is speaking up without becoming cruel." I blinked, surprised. "Victoria used to be kind," I murmured. "She was warm and bright. I don't know what changed her." She learned it from the people she thought mattered more than you, Lena said quietly. But last night, she remembered where she came from. I spent the rest of the day watching the sun move across the living room floor, every hour. Another news anchor repeated my story. A talk show even invited me. For a segment, I declined. This wasn't entertainment. It was life. Mine. That night, just as I was turning off the lights, I heard a knock. Soft, hesitant. I opened the door slowly and froze. It was Victoria. No makeup, hoodie. Red eyes, her arms were crossed, like she was still holding herself. Together. I didn't come to fight, she said. Good, I replied, stepping aside. She walked in slowly, stopping in the middle of the room. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then she whispered, "Was any of it for revenge?" I shook my head. No, it was for me. For the version of me you buried when you got ashamed of where you came from. I wasn't ashamed of you, she said quickly. You uninvited me to your wedding. She winced. I just thought you didn't belong there. Not with how things had gotten. I mean, after you told people I was just the help. Who raised you? Or when you said your stepmother was your real mother because she could afford to buy you a Prada bag. She turned away. I could see the shame pour down her face like rain. I was angry, she admitted. At you. At Dad. At being raised without what other girls had. And when I finally got it, I didn't want to look back, 'cause back reminded me of pain. Of being the girl with the wrong shoes, the wrong name. I sat down across from her. I was never trying to keep you poor, Victoria. I was trying to keep you fed, loved, safe. I scrubbed that estate's floors until my fingers bled. So you could go to dance class and eat strawberries in winter. Tears filled her eyes. No. A silence stretched between us like glass, fragile, dangerous. But beautiful in the way it reflected the truth. She finally said the words I had waited decades to hear. I'm sorry, Mom. Just like that, the weight cracked. I didn't jump into her arms. I didn't collapse, sobbing. I simply said, thank you. Because sometimes forgiveness doesn't roar, it exhales. We sat for hours. She told me the marriage might not last. That her new husband was furious she'd lied about. Her family and her past. I don't blame him, I said. But maybe this fall will help you build something real next time. Victoria looked up at me with trembling lips. I want to make things right. Then start with one truth at a time, I said gently. Before she left, she stood at the doorway and asked something that broke my heart open a little more. Can I come back tomorrow? I nodded. She gave me a weak smile and walked away. Not the same womanhood, abandoned me in a guest list. Not the spoiled bride who thought silence was elegance. She walked away as my daughter. Again, dash. The next few days felt like I was living someone else's life. People I'd never met were calling me brave. Women from around the world were messaging me, saying I'd stood up for every mother who had ever been forgotten. Some called me an accidental feminist icon. Others wanted to make a documentary. But fame, even the kind born out of justice, isn't always flattering. Some reporters camped outside my gate. One tabloid even ran a fake story claiming I'd faked being a housemaid and was secretly a millionaire all along. But the worst part, the calls from my former employers, the Winsleys. You embarrassed the family, barked Mrs. Winsley over the phone. You could have kept your little speech private. I nearly laughed. You mean like you kept Victoria's childhood private? How you never let your friends know your son had a child with the maid? There was silence. Then she snapped, "You're lucky we ever let you raise her." I didn't say anything. I simply hung up. For the first time in my life, I realized I no longer owed that woman anything. Not my silence, not my politeness, not my obedience. That realization, it was sweeter than revenge. The internet storm kept growing. News anchors dissected every second of my wedding speech like it was a political debate. Clips of me saying I raised her with love, not luxury. And still, she chose to forget me. Had gone viral on Instagram.talk. Shows debated, was Victoria a social climber or just a broken girl raised between two worlds? Pundits asked, should parents who work service jobs be ashamed? Even my old neighbor sent me a text. Elaine, you've always been quiet. Who knew you had that fire in you? I'm proud. Henry came over that afternoon. He brought pizza and a folder full of legal papers. What's this? I asked, eyeing the stack. Property consolidation, he explained. You officially own the estate you built. Estate. He grinned. I had the deed transferred. You're no longer just the cleaner who lived in the attic. You're the woman who turned a broken-down house into one of the most booked wedding venues in the city. I laughed softly, flipping through the papers. You know, for years, I used to hide my hands because they were so calloused from scrubbing floors, I said. And now? He asked. I looked down at them. Kay, now I wear rings that don't have to hide anything. A few hours later, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Victoria's husband. I owe you an apology. I didn't know the full story. I'm sorry for judging you, for not standing up for you when she pushed you out. If you're open to it, I'd like to meet. I read the message twice, and while part of me wanted to delete it, another part, the mother in me, knew this wasn't about him. It was about healing the gaps Victoria had created between the people who still wanted to matter to each other. That weekend, Victoria came by again. This time, she brought something with her. A photo album, not of her new life, of her childhood. She sat on my couch, flipping through images of birthdays, dance, recitals, the two of us in the kitchen baking cookies. I went through these last night, she said softly, and I realized I was never missing out on anything. You were the mother I needed, not the mother I thought I deserved. Tears pooled in my eyes. I just wanted you to have more, I whispered. I had you. It should have been enough. She replied. Then with a broken smile, she added, I want to tell my story, our story, publicly. The real one, can I? I hesitated. You sure you want to face that kind of storm? She nodded. If I can't own my truth, I'll never earn. Back yours. 2 days later, she went live on Instagram. She didn't cry. She didn't blame anyone. She told the truth about being raised by a single mother who worked in silence, about growing up in a house where love was served alongside leftovers, about losing her way in a world obsessed with image. And then she said something I'll never forget. I uninvited the woman who gave me life to the biggest day of mine. I thought I was saving face. Instead, I lost myself. And I want to say this. To every girl chasing approval from the wrong crowd, if you have a mother who sacrificed her dreams for yours, honor her. Not on stage, not with hashtags, but with truth. And with love. It broke the internet, and for once, it wasn't me who had to speak. Later that night, Victoria showed me the comments. Hundreds of daughters messaging her. Thousands of mothers. Thanking her. I still have a long way to go, she admitted. I smiled. You're walking in the right direction now. She hugged me tighter this time, and for the first time in years, I believed her love was real again. Great. Here's a week after Victoria's video went viral. A letter arrived at my gate. A real letter, handwritten, stamped. Smelling faintly of lavender and nostalgia. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands trembling as I unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was from him. Elaine, I don't know if I have the right to write you, but I saw the video, our daughter. And I realized how much I've missed by staying away. I was a coward. I let my family's fear and pride drown my heart. But not a day passed when I didn't think of you or her. You'll allow? I'd like to meet. Not as the man I once was, but as someone ready to finally face what he left behind. Andrew, I hadn't heard that name Andrew. Nearly 2 decades. Victoria's father, the man who had once whispered promises into my ears. While I scrubbed marble floors, the man who vanished when his parents threatened to disown him. If he acknowledged his child with a maid, back then, I was too scared to fight, too poor to sue, too pregnant to run. I raised Victoria alone, not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. And now, just when I'd stitched my life back together, he wanted to return. I wasn't sure how to feel, but I was sure of one thing: Victoria deserved to know. That evening, she came over for tea. Her eyes were softer now, less guarded, less polished. I handed her the letter without a word. She read it slowly, then looked up at me, her expression unreadable. "I didn't know his name," she said quietly. I nodded. I never spoke it aloud, not even to myself. "Do you want to see him?" I stared at my tea. I'm not sure. Part of me wants to scream. The other part just wants answers. She reached across the table, held my hand. "I think I want to meet him." That surprised me, she explained. "Not because he was a father, but because I need to see who chose to be a ghost in my life." 2 days later, we met at a quiet cafe outside the city. He looked older, thinner, more fragile, but his eyes, those soft, pale eyes, were exactly like Victoria's. He stood when we entered. "Elaine," he said, voice cracking. I nodded. "Andrew." Then he turned to her. "Victoria." She didn't hug him. She didn't cry. She simply said, "You left me with her." And yet she gave me everything. What could you possibly offer now? He swallowed hard. Nothing. Except the truth and an apology. And so he told us Dot about the pressure, the shame, the guilt, how he tried to send money anonymously, how he attended Victoria's school concerts from the back rows, never daring to be seen. I was weak, he confessed. And the older I got, the more I hated the man I became. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then Victoria surprised us both. "Do you want to know who I am today?" she asked. He nodded. So she told him about the speech, the fallout, the fame, the mistakes. Then she said, "But everything I became was because of her." And she looked at me, not like a maid, not like a burden, but like a mother, her mother. After he left, she asked me, "Do you think people can really change?" I thought about it for a while. I think they can learn. Sometimes that's enough. That night, I sat in my office, the one I used to mop just a few years ago, and wrote something. I never thought I'd write. A memoir. Not for IE. Not for money. Not for sympathy. But for every woman who had been erased by someone else's shame. I called it. She wasn't just the maid. A story of love, silence, and standing tall. And I started with these words. I was never invisible. They just weren't ready to see me. They watched me pull up in a black car. It's the same kind I used to clean fingerprints off. Their eyes, wide with disbelief, scanned the woman who stepped out in heels, not work shoes. I stood at the edge of the marble steps of the mansion. Their mansion, and for the first time, didn't feel small. Inside, the air was heavy with shock. Mrs. Whitmore, older now, though her eyes still carried the same cold fire, stepped forward. "You?" she whispered. "You can't be." "I can," I replied. "And I am." I handed her the paper. The deed. Signed. Stamped. Irrevocable. I now owned the Whitmore estate. The same house I had scrubbed as a teenager. The same stairs I once crawled on to remove candle wax. The same kitchen where I once overheard them calling me nothing but the help. Now it was mine. Victoria stood behind me, confident. It's powerful, not as a revenge tool, but as a woman fully grown into her name. "Mother," she said with a smirk. "Shall we begin the tour?" I almost laughed, almost, but instead I walked past the marble statue that used to intimidate me, and into the drawing room, the one where they fired me years ago. Mrs. Whitmore followed her husband. Frailer and mostly silent, watched from the corner. "I suppose this is revenge," she finally said, bitter. I turned to her slowly. "No," I said. "This is closure. I didn't demolish the house. I didn't burn the furniture. I didn't scream or demand apologies. Instead, I held a press conference right on there. Law & reporters gathered. Drones buzzed. People tuned in worldwide. I stood before the cameras. my voice steady. This house once symbolized power, status, and shame. I was made to feel like I didn't belong. But today, I return not as a maid, but as a mother, an entrepreneur, and a woman who refused to stay small. I didn't buy this mansion to prove anything. I bought it because no one tells me where I do or don't belong anymore. The crowd erupted in applause. Some wept. Victoria wiped a tear from her cheek. Later that evening, I walked alone through the hallways. Memories echoed, the clang of mop buckets, the whispers behind doors, the slaps of rejection, and I smiled. Because the house didn't haunt me anymore. It honored me. Victoria entered my room, now the master bedroom. "Mom," she said gently, "I'm proud of you." I looked at her, the daughter I raised on dreams and dignity. "I'm proud of you," I replied. We hugged, not as someone rescued and rescuer, but as two women who had built themselves brick by brick. Months passed. I started a foundation for underprivileged housemaids and domestic workers. We trained them, educated them, funded their dreams. We named it the Elaine Rise Initiative. Victoria spoke at the launch. In heels. With grace. With fire. Then one day, as we sat on the front porch of the mansion, sipping tea, she asked me, "Would you do it all over again?" I thought for a moment. "If it leads me here to you, to this peace, then yes." She grinned. "Then you truly are the richest woman I know." I laughed softly, not because she was wrong, but because, finally, I believed it too.